the Rogue Startups Podcast, where two startup founders are sharing lessons learned and pitfalls to avoid in their online businesses. And now, here's Dave and Craig.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Rogue Startups, episode 159. Dave is off this week, and I have the pleasure of speaking with Courtenay Farquharson. Courtenay, how you doing?
Hey. Good, mate. All the way over from Australia. I think you got the surname right, so that's good.
Sorry to butcher the last name there. That's a tough one.
No, everyone does. So that's all good.
Yeah. So Courtenay sent us a message. I don't know, maybe up to a month ago, kind of talking about how he's had some success with, what we might call like integration marketing or being part of a platform. And as someone who's been kind of a part of several different platforms throughout my business, I thought it'd be fun to have you on the show today, Courtenay, to talk about where you've come from and what you've learned as far as kind of the good and bad maybe of being part of a platform and relying on integrations. Because I think there's some risk that it introduces, right?
Oh, certainly. I mean, I've been a long time listener of the show, and I think Dave, has spoken a little bit about platforms, and especially when you got recapture into Shopify, the Shopify work app marketplace, and kind of some of the benefits there, but also just some of the risks too, right? Like, I guess the biggest risk is always offering a piece of functionality that potentially that sort of platform will offer, in the case of maybe abandoned cart emails or something like that, right? So whatever you do, you got to do it better.
Yeah. So for folks who don't kind of know your backstory and what you're up to, can you share a little bit about your business and kind of where you come from in the platform and partnership kind of realm?
Yeah, sure. Look, I mean, I spent a lot of time in the Microsoft space and worked as a SharePoint consultant for my sins, but also it's taken me places. So originally from South Africa and came over to Australia about 11 years ago. As a SharePoint consultant, and as many of you might know, it's a document management platform that, I guess it's a bit of everything, but primarily a document management platform for larger companies. Yeah, and I guess I was always like looking for opportunities in that space because I think the Microsoft ecosystem is pretty big, and it's largely untapped by the sort of bootstrapped entrepreneur. It's easier to go after, I guess, smaller marketplaces.
Mm-hmm.
I got involved with a product called Microsoft Flow, which is essentially like a Zapier kind of competitor for Microsoft. And whilst I was learning about that, SharePoint started to move online into the cloud space. And one of the things that SharePoint, like the on-premise version, so people used to install it locally on their servers at work or whatever. One of the things that they lost was this functionality to be able to email incoming documents into libraries and lists within SharePoint, right? So once people moved over to the cloud version, they didn't offer that anymore. And that became a major pain point for a lot of people. A few customers that I knew of that were like, we used to email all our documents into SharePoint, now we can't do this. And so I kind of just built one for a customer. He was I guess it's that classic story, right? Like, it was a bit of a pain point, so I went and looked for a couple of grand. I'll help you out, and that's kind of how Parser got started. So Parser's, to get to the actual point, was essentially an email. Well, it's an email parser, but an email extraction tool to be able to extract information from incoming emails, attachments, CSVs, Excels, PDFs. A lot of people get a lot of information via email every day, but they can't make it work for themselves. They sort of leave it in their inbox, and there's a lot of automation you can kick off just from an email. So that's I guess, essentially the background to Parser and how it got started.
And so you've seen from that initial guy with the pain point, you built kind of a one-off solution. The app kind of grew out of that, I guess. But you've used the Microsoft ecosystem or other kind of integrations and platforms to kind of grow the business to where it is today.
Yeah, look, I mean, pretty much Microsoft Flow, Zapier, Salesforce ecosystem. I was really lucky to get on to Microsoft Flow at the time because, I worked in Microsoft previously. I knew a few people there. And when Microsoft Flow came out, they were looking for, yeah, I guess like SaaS products, but just anything to enhance their platform. Like the greatest thing about marketplaces, right, is that it's kind of like this, I mean, for lack of a cliche, like this symbiotic relationship. So they need you and you need them, right? So,
Yeah.
like to be effective as a integrations tool or like a integrations marketplace, you need to offer a lot of integrations, right? Like people want to use your ecosystem and then get locked in. And I think that's what Zapier has done really well. Like they just got thousands of these products. They've made it really easy for connectors to kind of get connected in. And that sort of enhances their, I guess, their product themselves,
The
right?
value,
Like
the value. Like if you're a customer of Zapier and you can connect everything there, it's so much more valuable than just onesie twosie stuff, right?
yeah, exactly. I mean, the more locked in you are, the more zaps you got going on there. Like you're not likely to leave, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so like that's why I think that this marketplace, and I think that it's an ongoing opportunity for, I guess, new entrepreneurs or new SaaS entrepreneurs to kind of take advantage of is, like one, it's kind of normally free to get into these places, but two, it's like free marketing, right?
Yeah.
Because now you're in this ecosystem, and hey, you got customers coming to your door.
Yeah, I mean, so for Sales Camp for our a referral marketing tool, we signed up to be one of Stripe's preferred partners, and
Okay.
yeah, I mean, the app gets an unfortunately low amount of traffic, but
Okay.
most of our good leads and new trial signups are coming from Stripe now because we're on the Stripe Works With page as
Oh yeah.
yeah, just a handful of people there. And I mean, really, we built the Stripe integration a while back, but to
Yeah.
get featured there, cost a little bit of money, filled an application, and was really simple. So I mean, yeah, we're seeing, the little benefit we're seeing in terms of good traffic and qualified leads coming to Sales Camp right now, just because we don't have a lot of
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
that's great, right? Like it's, I'm not saying you're going to be thousands of customers, but it's, the biggest problem with like launching these SaaS, and trust me, I've done a lot of this. I've got a lot of failed startups, but like it's those first 10 customers, right? And often these marketplaces can just get you there.
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. I mean, I think we look at, launching as a Stripe preferred partner or whatever, as a good starting point, something like Zapier as a secondary point, and then going into more and more tools, other billing systems and things like that down the line.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Okay.
so for Parser though, how has it gone for you? I mean, you started one place and then went to another and went to another, or did you kind of say, like, this is going to be my growth strategy. I'm going to attack all these at once. What's been the strategy there?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So, I mean, I guess, like I said, I got a lot of failed startups under my belt. So, as soon as I started making, I mean, I remember my first customer, and he was, I think I worked probably like 20 hours on him for like the $29 a month he was going to pay me. But, it became, once I started getting that recurring revenue, it was kind of, okay, so now I just need to diversify this thing and just get out there as much as possible. And so I started just building all sorts of features, and turns out that's really the wrong thing to do. What I realized what I needed to do was kind of optimize the product for that marketplace first. And, I started to do some onboarding flows where I would ask you, hey, where did you find us? And if you told me you found us in Microsoft Flow, like I would optimize the product or personalize the product for that case. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of how I've grown. I've measured what integrations people use, and kind of started to optimize with like videos and documentation around those particular integrations.
Yeah, yeah. Have you seen much downside? I mean, we talk about the risk a little bit and allude to it, but have you seen any of your integration partners kind of move in on your turf, if you will?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That's definitely happened. Yeah, and I guess there was one or two email parsers that I think there was one that existed already, And yeah, he was already in the Zapier marketplace, and I get Zapier themselves have an email parser, so there's a prime example of like a marketplace themselves doing it themselves. But yeah, look, it happens. But I kind of got a few tricks. Well, not a few tricks, but I got a few things that I've done to make sure that I try to stay ahead of them. And I think that that's kind of where it comes back to helping in that community. And what I mean by that is kind of connecting with, like in the Microsoft space, I was lucky enough to meet some of the guys in the flow, like the program managers and things. And so, I've offered to write blogs and, do podcasts, create videos, that kind of stuff, where you kind of enhance their marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're a Shopify app, you're reaching out to the guys there and going, hey, I'd love to write an article about X or Y, or create a video to help customers do X or Y, then, that they get value out of that, right? Like you're kind of doing their work for them.
Yeah.
So that's sort of how I try to stay ahead of them, but it's tough, right?
From a product perspective, I think that, looking at integrating with other kind of marketplaces or other products, for me is more of like a product decision that I need to make and kind of be conscious of than anything. Like, I mean, knowing the people at the place you're integrating with and having a good relationship there is important, but as much or maybe more than anything is like Dave with Recapture and Shopify having abandoned cart recovery emails. He's not too worried about it because they only do like 20% of the work that he does, right? So he's like way ahead of him on a product perspective. I think about that a little bit, like from my perspective with Sales Camp too. I don't know, has that driven a lot of like what you're doing with the product to try and stay differentiated from the people that you're integrating into, so they don't just make a feature and kill your business?
Yeah, it is an eternal warrior, I guess. Like they seem to not be focused on this particular area that much. And I suppose as you get more sophisticated, like PDF parsing, for instance, is not an easy thing to do. And again, how big is the market for that? Like within Microsoft Flow, PDF parsing, well, you got invoice, you got receipts, and that kind of stuff. So there's definitely a bit of a market there, but maybe it's not big enough for that particular marketplace to kind of go after.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess, and diversifying across the marketplaces. I was just doing a bit of research before the show, and like there's a couple more that I want to get into, like this Salesforce, is Zapier, Microsoft Flow, but then there's other like smaller ones like Workato. Workato is a Zapier for enterprise. There's Infusionsoft, so I guess there's opportunities to kind of diversify across those marketplaces and diversify your risk in many ways.
Yeah.
I don't know if that kind of answers the question at all.
No, for sure. I mean, I think that's the big risk, is to say like, all right, we're going to build this thing to integrate into this place. And then if the integration partner goes and builds the feature that you have, it's not really Zapier so much, because I mean, that's like an integration hub, but like Salesforce, what if Salesforce just builds this thing, then you're shit out of luck, like overnight.
Yeah, that's right. No, I mean, you're right.
Like Josh Pickford with Barometrics, and Stripe released analytics last year, and he was like, I'm not worried about it because we do like 10 times more than they're going to do, which is true. I mean, Stripe analytics are almost non-existent.
And I guess, also like Josh would be like a massive fan of Barometrics story, and I guess who was it, Patrick Campbell and Profitwell, like they offer their Stripe analytics. But like when you look at Josh's product, like, I mean, all due respect to everybody, but the UI and some of the other offerings around, just there's a bunch of like event-based stuff that none of the other tools do, and you kind of like there's a lot of value there, right?
Yeah. So kind of, can you give a perspective of like where the business is at this point in terms of like number of customers or some kind of metric?
Yeah, sure. Look, we're roughly around 100 customers. It's actually quite rounded numbers. I mean, they pay us on average around about $100 a month US, which is like 120 Australian, because the Australian dollar's not doing very well against the US, so I'm quite enjoying charging in US dollars.
Yeah, good for you. Yeah.
And Yeah, so around about 100 customers, yeah, $100 a month. So yeah, you can do the numbers there.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
early figure kind of revenue. Yeah, so and we started in I think we were first paying customer in around July 20 August, maybe August 2016. So it's been a slow burn. It's not we're by no means a hockey stick, but I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. One thing that we've seen kind of recently with Castos, so we integrated with Spotify, so people can have their podcast dedicated to Spotify. Yeah, it's cool. Our support burden for this has gone up quite a bit. And I wonder if you see the same thing, because I've heard these horror stories from people that like integrate with Zapier, and they're like, you need to have like a custom API version for just working with Zapier because they ask for these weird things. And we've seen it with Spotify a little bit, that like we give them the data in a very particular way that they want it. And if there's shit missing, then the whole thing just breaks, instead of just like kind of gracefully breaking. Do you see that? And
how do you integrate with Spotify currently?
Just via an API, their API.
Right. Okay. And then what are you providing them?
We give them a special RSS feed, and then they consume it, process all the files, and then redistribute it to listeners.
Right.
Okay. The problem comes like, if there's a missing field from the feed, then like just the whole page, the whole show breaks on their end. And so then the customers rightfully come to us and say, you have the Spotify integration, it's broken. And so that's cool. Yeah. But I mean, objectively, like if we didn't offer this integration, we would be losing customers. But also it's, like 10% of our support burden at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you see that like your tool as it stands has a support burden of X with all of your integrations? Is it 2 or 3 times that, or do the integrations not kind of increase your support burden a lot?
Look, you probably hit the pain point on the head, right? It's the thing with Parser is it's an integrations tool, right? Like, so we're not really a vertical. We're not solving, say, like what you do really well, which is in the podcast space. We're kind of really across a lot of verticals in terms of industry, and so people are integrating into a lot of tools, and so they'll often come to us and they'll be like, I fired up Parser, I went through the onboarding, I got the data into Microsoft Flow, it's coming through, I can see it, but now I can't get it into like insert integration here, right? I can't get it into Salesforce, I can't get it into Dynamics CRM, whatever, right? So like I get that all the time, right? And like quite honestly, if they can't get the data in there, they don't become a paying customer. And so like the first thing I did was just publish a whole bunch of guides, right? So, this is like I started doing just written guides, and these are the steps you should take. And if you got a problem, just, here's my email address. So I'd flick in those guides. That works sort of like maybe, I'm guessing, half the time, 50% of the time. Then I got a couple of videos, and I was like, okay, that works a little bit, kind of builds a bit of rapport because I see your face, I hear your voice. But then, like, there's definitely times where I have to jump on a call and like help them through Microsoft Flow stuff, or Zapier stuff, like where I'm actually like helping them through a product that isn't mine, but I happen to really want them to be successful at. So yeah.
And that's just kind of that's the price of running the integration and the business you get from it. Is that kind of how you look at it?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because like the lifetime value of the customer is fairly good once they're working. Like I typically don't hear from them ever again. Not ever again, but maybe once if they wanted to cancel. But like, once they're sending emails to an inbox and it's just appearing in Salesforce, they just continue to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it's an initial support burden. Sometimes I don't get the win, but if I do, then yeah, like it's a win for everyone, I suppose.
Yeah. So this is a really interesting point that I think is a decision that a lot of people need to make with kind of where they want their product to sit. And it is the harder it is for somebody to cancel and get rid of your service, the better churn is going to be. You probably see very low churn because it's an integrated tool into people's business. And if they get rid of it, then all sorts of shit breaks in their business, right? And we see this with Sales Camp quite a bit that like, I mean, granted, we only have whatever, a dozen customers, right? But they have, most of them have done like custom integrations into their apps. And this is like a revenue generating tool for them. Like they're very likely never going to leave. I say never, very, very rarely.
Yeah.
As opposed to like Baremetrics is a good example. Do you want to use Baremetrics or do you want to use ProfitWell? Like it takes 5 minutes to switch right between the two.
Yeah.
And there's no loss of data because it's all in Stripe anyhow, right? It's just those guys punching a bunch of numbers. So I don't know. I mean, I look at this decision to be like really integrated into somebody's business is great on the long term because it makes the product really sticky. At the same time, I think it's really hard to sell really quickly because people do have to integrate in some way, whether it's the point and click integration and hooking a few pieces up or whatever, or like us is like integrating using an API into your application is like a lot more involved. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, man. I mean, I couldn't agree more with you. And that was the reason why we got rid of our $29 plan. Because like I'd like set up a call, we'd chat about it, like, you know, and then it would be maybe a few more emails after that. And you're just like, right, so I got to do all this for $29 a month.
Yeah.
And I think that also is probably has some bearing or effect on where you sort of focus your tool, right? Like, I mean, in the Microsoft space, people or companies tend to be a bit bigger. So they, you know, the price point of like 99, if it's like $99 a month or $2.99 a month, they don't seem to care that much. Like sometimes I just go, okay, it's going to be like this much, right? Like for the integration or you know, I say, I just test stuff, right? I go, hey, yeah, no, for me to set that up, it's going to be like $900. And they're like, oh yeah, that's cool.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so you're like, wow, okay. So there's a bit of like service kind of revenue I could look at making, but yeah, then it's not really where I want to go. But yeah, like I think it does affect price point, but like you said, you just need to be part of their business, don't you? You just have to like be that integral part.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's tough. So you bring up a good point in terms of pricing. Like, do you feel like do you start at $100 now, or do you have something between like $29 and $99?
We have a $50 a month plan. It's, to be honest, it's not that well used. Like I feel like that's sort of for me the introductory price.
Okay.
And yeah, look, it definitely gets people started. We got a free plan too, which allows you to get 15 emails a month, which, you know, definitely gets people integrated. But, you know, when people say, oh, could you connect it up for me or something like that, and they're on the free plan, they'd have to have shown some intent, you know, in the email conversation to be like, yeah, this company really needs it.
Yeah.
Or, you know, they have to be saying, look, we're probably going to be sending 2,000 emails a month. And so then I take that risk, right? I go, okay, cool. Well, let's get them integrated because if this works, it's 2,000 emails a month, which means you'll be on my $100 a month plan.
Yeah. Are there any things that you do in particular to try and stratify those either low plans or like new customers or trials or anything to try and see who's worth spending the time on that they would be getting up to those higher plans in the future?
So is the question like, are they upgrading a lot, like in the app?
No, it's like who is likely to upgrade and how do you identify them to know who's worth spending the time on?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I think, I mean, it's normally a conversation, right? I'll ask them, you know, they'll say, yeah, I want to get this integration working. And then one of the first questions I'll ask is how many emails are you sending a month, right? Like to us, or how many of these leads do you get a month? Like we get a lot of people that use it for website leads. Or how many invoices are you going to be sending us a month? And then like, it's sort of like, it's based on that number as to how much I invest in time.
Mm-hmm.
Like if somebody says, oh, it's only 10 emails a month, I'm not like, I don't just ignore them because I know I get a few customers that'll have one integration going and then like within their business, they realize that, hey, we do PDF. Like let's say they're sending us their leads, right? And we're extracting their leads from the email and they're sending it to Salesforce. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, you do PDF too? Like I try and upsell them in the app, right? So I've got like this, hey, we tried our PDF extractor and then they fire that up and now all of a sudden they're sending through more emails.
Yeah.
You get a bit of that.
Interesting. Super interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not huge. Like of course we're not huge numbers yet, but I mean, I certainly think that there's opportunity for that kind of like cross selling within the app. Well, not cross selling, but kind of upselling, I suppose.
Right.
Based on volume.
Yeah. So for folks who are trucking along and doing whatever their business is doing, if they're looking at like starting to integrate into more apps or being part of a marketplace like a Zapier or the Microsoft kind of ecosystem or something, if you were looking back at kind of getting started down this road of like doing a lot more integrations, what would be some of the things you would try to do or be aware of?
Like, so you're saying what are my learnings along the way of doing this?
But like the good and the bad, right? Like what's really been great about it and what do you wish you wouldn't have done maybe?
Yeah, it's a good question. Look, I think whatever investment I've made has like in a marketplace has been good. So I've been kind of lucky, so as I was looking at it as a first marketplace, I would say Zapier, right? Because that's very point and click kind of integration. Like if you got an API, it's fairly easy to get set up with them.
Yeah.
They make it super easy, and then you go through like an approval process, and then you're up, right? Look, I think some of the things that surprised me about these marketplaces too is like I got a few resellers. So there's like a bunch of consultants that obviously work with clients, and so they're looking for a solution, and then all of a sudden, they want to sell your software to their client. So there's opportunity to kind of white label it. So that was definitely a learning for me. I learned how to optimize search within these marketplaces. So I'm not saying all of them, but Microsoft Flow, for instance, like there's certain ways that you can change your app description and things like that, where you actually come up in search quite a lot higher, like maybe above your competitors.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like an option too. Like I read about this guy, I can't remember his name. He was doing email marketing for Gmail, right? gmass.co. I think that's the thing. And he comes up really high for mail merge inside the Chrome extension marketplace. I mean, I think he's built a business on the back of that.
Oh wow. Uh-huh.
So search, yeah. So I mean, search is pretty interesting, right? Because we're all focusing on SEO, like we're all focusing on, hey, come up on Google. Well, maybe not all of us, but I definitely was. And like, there's a free way of just kind of getting higher up in a particular focused search within an app store.
Yeah. Do you find
some of the downsides,
customers in Zapier are, not to be negative, but kind of like us, like I'm going to say lower tier B2B customers, or would you focus on like the Microsoft Flow ecosystem where they're multi-billion-dollar companies that wouldn't mind at all spending a couple $100 a month?
Yeah, look, I mean, the ones from Zapier, you're definitely right. Like, I think that's where Zapier focuses, right? It's probably smaller customers.
Yeah.
But, they still, like, the best thing about them is that they usually have their credit card, like, in their wallet. So, like, if you provide them a good experience, they can just fire their credit card in there and like, they become a paying customer. Whereas the Microsoft Flow ones, sometimes you hit that lovely procurement conversation where it's like, oh, we don't use cards, we only do manual invoicing.
Right. Can't send you a check. No,
yeah, I don't know if you had any of that. Yeah. Like checks, and I'm like, I don't even know what that is. Like, I wasn't alive when doing that.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, like again, I'm not saying it's all positive, but you certainly, like, Microsoft Flow tends to be the bigger guys, like you said, and you hit roadblocks with them where it's not as easy to sign up as a customer, but maybe the number's bigger. But then, like Zapier, you gotta, I just focus on both. It's hard because I have a full-time job too. So it's kind of, I just try and provide as much value as I can to customers. Doesn't matter who they are. And the word spreads too, which is good.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man. So outside of kind of being in marketplaces and integrations, anything else that you want to kind of share with folks, learnings that you've had in the past over, the last couple of years?
Yeah, look, I mean, I guess I've sort of been on this journey for a long time. I've been listening to your guys' show quite a lot, and I find it inspiring, right? Like to hear, other guys that are in similar places, thinking similar things to me, just trying to hack it every day, right? Like you're just trying to, build your business, and I get a lot of satisfaction from helping customers, and obviously like building a business online. But I think for me, the biggest thing that I've learned is this kind of like determination, right? Like none of this stuff comes easy, and it's not just like, oh yeah, can I listen to your marketplace? Yeah, sure. Just fill out this form, and there's a lot of toing and froing, and you just got to be persistent. Yeah, and then like the other thing that I've started looking at too, which is kind of a learning, is the SEO space. I just think it's becoming increasingly harder to optimize your site and optimize for SEO. I mean, I don't know what you find with your businesses. Like, do you take on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I have. I'm looking a lot right now at kind of our site structure and SEO as it relates to content marketing for Castos, and kind of saying like, yeah, we get a decent amount of traffic to these couple of pages. How can we build more content to point to these pages, like internal linking to these pages?
Yeah, okay.
And they're like high intent keywords that we're ranking for. So that's kind of the extent of the I'll call like the internal SEO. But yeah, I mean that's about all that we do. And of course we do like keyword research around like what we want to write about to try and rank for some of the long tail stuff. But yeah, I mean I think I guess we try to do a little bit of both. Like we try to rank for the long tail stuff for like the spoke articles, and for the hubs, they're the really big keywords that we're just trying to get on the first page somewhere for.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, yeah, like that was sort of my approach always with. Well, it's not always been, like I said. I got 1,000 started with 20 or 30 of failed startups along the way, and I think the biggest thing was, I'm a developer. I can build the software. There's no problem, right? But I can have a working piece of software that. Like usually I just use because I was always just hopeless at marketing. And I think that my biggest learnings has just been that whenever you build something, for me, like, and I can't prescribe this to anybody else, right? Like for me, what works as a sort of introverted, more tending to introverted kind of guy is that like you got to have people that come to you. I mean, and that's just for me, right? Like I know you spoke to, I think it was Jamie Kennedy. I was talking about LinkedIn outreach. Like that makes me feel sick. But like that's just me, right? Like that, I just want to build a business around like people finding my software and finding it interesting, and like, hey, then I can help you. I'm hopeless at upselling people, so
yeah.
So that's definitely been my learning is, get people to find you, and you can do that through SEO. You can do that through Google AdWords, although you better have a big bank account, or, you can do it through marketplaces, which to me is the thing that's really worked. Yeah.
Yeah. No, man, that's great. Cause I mean, I think a lot of the people that, listen to this show and are kind of in the communities that we're in are, technical people, and maybe you're introverted and don't want to do things like cold email or LinkedIn outreach or things like that, and would rather kind of develop their way to some marketing channels, which is perfectly fine. I mean, I definitely understand. I mean, if I could have no phone calls with customers and build a great business, that would not be the end of the world.
Yeah. And I don't think I think you hit a good point there, Craig. Like, because invariably, if you start having some success with SEO, you're going to get customers, and they're going to want to speak to you. So you can't be totally like, I never talk to customers, because that's just ridiculous. But, it's a different conversation when they find you and they're interested, rather than, hey, why don't you try our piece of software, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the the nice thing about this approach is it gets like a huge like bolus and influx of traffic and eyeballs on your product. You're in a place where whatever 100,000 people are going every month. 20% of them are going to see your stuff and click on the link and come over and see. And that volume of, I don't know, interest, really, really highly qualified interest is tough to get.
It is.
In other ways, I think. Yeah. I mean, we're trying to build all these organic marketing channels, and I'm like, fuck, we could just pay another $300 to someone like Stripe or integrate with Zapier for $500 of development time and solve that problem of not getting enough eyeballs. So yeah, I mean, that's a pretty valid point. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I did some research before the show, right? And so the Microsoft Office 365 sort of ecosystem. I'm not saying that I have this every month, but they have 60 million monthly active users, right? Like active users on Office 365, right? Like that's just massive. I mean, I don't know if you've invested. Well, I don't really invest, but anyone invests in Microsoft stocks in the last year, you'd kind of see that. Zapier have 1 million users in 2016. They talk in the blog post. You got Salesforce at 150,000 users. Workato, 20,000 users. Infusionsoft, 80,000. Like, so that's like targeted traffic, right? So it's definitely an option. Like that's if your particular SaaS kind of appeals to all those marketplaces. I mean, I'm lucky in that it does, but maybe you're doing like podcast motor where it doesn't. But
no, for sure. No, I mean, that just doesn't apply there. But I mean, I think for a lot of, more and more, every piece of software is connected in some way. So if it's Stripe or
that's right,
Microsoft Flow, or almost everyone can integrate with Zapier.
Yeah.
And probably because of that, those places will get, Zapier in particular, will get saturated. At some point. But then things like PySync, and some of these other, data.
Yeah, they're really cool, aren't they?
Yeah.
I came across them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice little tool.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Courtenay, this has been a really cool conversation. For folks, I'm sure there'll be a lot of folks who want to kind of reach out and chat more about kind of your experiences and get in touch. Where would be the best place for folks to kind of reach out and chat with you some more?
Yeah, sure. I guess, Twitter, I'm starting to become a bit better on Twitter. So it's Court, so COURTZZ, I think. And then, I guess just hit me up at Courtenay, so COURTENAY @parser.com. And I'd be happy to chat about anything really. I love talking about this stuff. So
Awesome. And that's Parser with 2 R's or 3 R's, right? PARS.
2 R's.
Yeah.
I wanted it at .com, and
cool.
So that was the one way to get it. But hopefully I'll be coming to MicroConf for the first time, I hope, this year. So
cool.
Maybe I'll meet you there.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds good. I'm on the fence still, but hopefully it'll work out.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Cool. Awesome, Courtenay. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
Be in touch soon.
Yeah. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Rogue Startups. If you haven't already, head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review for the show. For show notes from each episode and a few extra resources to help you along your journey, head over to roguestartups.com to learn more.